Hi, I'm Sandra Sadowski of Medievals.net, and today we're speaking to author Emma Campion, who also writes under the name of Candace Robb. Emma did her graduate work in medieval and Anglo-Saxon literature, and she's the foremost scholar on Alice Perers. Thank you for speaking with us today. I appreciate you taking the time.
Oh, it's great.
I just wanted to ask you a few questions about your book, which I'm reading. It's very good. And the first thing was, if you could tell us a bit about Alice and what drew you to the topic.
Well, in my former life as Candace Robb, I wrote two of the Owen Archers had Alice in them. And I used the old reputation of Alice as just this wonderfully evil woman. And then I realized I really couldn't make sense out of it. Mm-hmm. Knowing what I do about medieval women and about the power of the king, I thought, how did this woman who came from nowhere attract the king? Mm-hmm. So I started delving, and I started doing research. And I started giving papers here at Kalamazoo in the White Hart Society about Alice to try to get people to talk to me about what their research had been.
Share information.
And all of a sudden one day, after I had actually started writing the book, Mark Wormrod just put up on the wall this old petition that revealed that Alice Perers was not her maiden name. She was being sued for a debt that her husband, Janin Perers, owed, and he was now dead. So that just opened this whole new life for Alice for me. It was great. I mean, everybody in the room looked around at me like, oh, is she going to fall through the floor now? Mm-hmm. Because she's been doing all this research and now it's changed. But it was great for me because suddenly things started making sense. She wasn't this innocent young nothing, but she had come from London merchant class. She had been married. There could be some connection with the court and with wealthy merchants.
Yeah, I saw that too. I was doing a little background, and I noticed that she's been married twice. She was married to, I believe, a William of Windsor, mm-hmm. and also, but then I also read that she was a Perers, but was she John Perers of Holt's daughter, or how did she come across? Like, what her origins were rather confusing. So I just wanted to sort of delve into which is the main thought now, like her actual origins.
Well, it's really clear from these old petitions that had never been translated until they were doing the digitization mm-hmm. of the PRO, that they actually realized that Perers was not her maiden name. So all of these theories about this knight that she might have been her father, or these merchants that might have been, or the Tyler in Kent or something, they were just dead ends, and that's why it had never made sense, because she's obviously somebody who's coming from London and who was married to this London merchant. And we have records of a John Perers, who would probably have been Janin's father, who actually provided a lot of the cloth for Edward III's coronation. So, I mean, there's just this wonderful connection with the royal family. But we don't really know for sure who she was. Mark Wormrod's theory for a while was that because there is a mention of a John Salisbury, my brother, who she leaves some property to, that she was a Salisbury. But Salisbury is like Smith in this period of English history. So it's kind of hard to tie that down. So I use Salisbury because you have to make a decision at some point when you're writing a novel.
And then also, as I was reading, she's very vilified and painted as greedy and unscrupulous. But as I'm reading the book, I'm falling in love with her. You've managed to redeem her and actually have the reader root for the character. So I'm just wondering what drew you to redeem Alice and just paint that other side of her, because
there's this...
I like her character.
Thank you. I do too.
I
do too. In fact, I dedicated a book to her. I just felt, when I read that when she's before Parliament, because Parliament rises against her when Edward is very sick, and then after he dies, they exile her, essentially, and she forfeits all of her properties, even the ones that were very obviously her own and had nothing to do with her connection with the king. And she stands before Parliament. They are accusing her of all this stuff, and she cannot speak. She is forbidden to speak. And I thought, here is this woman who was never permitted to speak out in her defense, who, she says, toward the end, that she knows that she made big mistakes because she didn't understand court. And I thought this was one of the most important things. She hadn't been raised in this kind of environment. She didn't know what was proper, but what I really thought was horrible was she could never speak. So I decided when I was writing it that I was going to give it in her voice and let her finally tell her story. Instead of Thomas Walsingham, who was this monk who hated her, he hated John of Gaunt, he was just using his scandalous chronicle.
No, I like that she's a strong character, but you sympathize with her. It's not just a strong woman is vilified because she must be greedy and scrupulous. So I'm enjoying the fact that I'm actually rooting for her as opposed to what I'm reading being written about her. It's like, this is a different woman. But I also wanted to ask you what is coming in the future for you working on Alice or other projects that you have on the go?
Yeah, I know that more information is going to come up about Alice, and that I'm going to want to do something, probably nonfiction, maybe papers here at Kalamazoo or at Leeds or something. But what I'm working on right now, what I have a contract for right now, is a book of Jonah Kent, the Black Prince's wife. And she's a whole different, she's in this book, and she's actually in my last Owen Archer book. So she's been on my mind for quite a while. She's such an interesting character in herself because she has this wild marriage history that I won't go into here because it'll take too long. But she's a very different subject for me now. Alice was all alone against, in the court and completely confused. Joan is such a part of everything. She's part of the Plantagenet destiny, so.
Two totally different women.
Yeah.
Two totally different perspectives. Thank you for talking to us. And the book, I believe, comes out this July.
Yes, it does. July 6th.
It's a great read, and I encourage everyone to pick up a copy. Thank you so much for coming over and talking to us.
Thanks.